Hi, and welcome to Pengaflödet podcast and Paul again. Second time. I think you're the third one who have been two times on the podcast. So I hope you enjoyed last time.
I'm privileged to be here on the second time, but I love breaking records. When you invite me on a third time, then let's talk.
Okay.
Right?
I will.
But it all depends on how this podcast goes. It could be a pile of rubbish, and then you'll never ask me back again.
No. I think this podcast is what people have been waiting for, especially we from Sweden or people are investing abroad in UK, because the white papers is so important. Even if it's not a law yet, it's very important to just look what they're discussing. And you are in it. You're talking with people. So who else is better to talk with than you? Obviously.
Cool. I mean, it's funny actually, because we've got lots more regulation on the horizon, and I'll go into more detail about the white paper. Really, a lot of it is based on the decent home standard, because they want to make sure that there's double the amount of much more decent homes in the private rental sector. But I read the 84 pages of the white paper. I locked myself in a dark room. That's how I have to concentrate, because my head's all over the place. And as you've most probably met me before, my concentration levels are really bad. But to digest it, it's actually not that bad. But it's how it's implemented, and that's why they've got to listen to experts in the industry and people that do this day in, day out, because if they get some of it wrong, what happens is it stifles investment, and we are on the cuff of a storm brewing in the UK, which I'll explain in more detail how the economy and stuff like that is. But actually, you living in Sweden, and I don't know the Swedish housing laws and stuff, but I work with a really big investor who a lot of people in Sweden would have heard of, and they've got a big portfolio in Sweden. And the Swedish regulation on renting is far more intense than what it is in the UK.
Yes. That's why we're investing in the UK.
It's not to be frightened. So should I just kick off with some stats currently in the private rental sector, so you guys in Sweden know what's happening in the UK? All right.
Yes.
So the size of the current private rental sector. So there's 4.4 million households, which is about 19% of the housing sector that rent in the private rental sector. The social housing sector is about 17%. And 43% of renters out there are aged between 16 and 34. So that's where there's been the shift change in the last 10 to 15 years. Renters are younger. A 40% increase in the last 10 years of retired people renting. So there's lots more silver-haired people renting in the private rental sector for loads of different types of reasons. 30% of renters have children. Thus, that's why the government also want to make sure that renting is rented at a decent standard. Okay. The private renters, on average, in the UK, spend 31% of their income on rent. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Because I'm just going to keep talking, so I need to make sure that you're on the ball here, Nana.
Yeah.
Okay. So, tell me, what do you think the average rent in pounds, in sterling is in London now? What are we up to? Go on, have a guess. What do you think? I'm going to do a drum roll. Okay, come on.
Okay, do you mean a single family? Not
just
HMO.
The average property. I mean, it could be two things. The average property for rental in London, cost-wise, what do you think it is?
£2,000.
That's a really good guess. It's about 1850. So
I was close.
You've impressed me. You're doing your homework. I'm impressed. And I might, on the back of that answer, I might come back a third time. All right.
Yeah. Is it you or me who's interviewing?
Listen, I've been doing media for 21 years. I just end up taking over. I apologize.
It's okay. It's okay.
Look,
I love
compared
it.
to owner occupiers, 18%, and social tenants is 27% of what they earn on their income. And then 73% of private renters out there actually are working. Okay, so you've got 17% that aren't, 23% that technically may not be. 1.1 million tenants are on a housing benefit, okay, which they say is 26%. On average, private renters live in a current property for 4 years and 2 months. So forget about the 6-month tenancy and the 12-month tenancy. On average, tenants are staying longer, and they will continue to stay longer, depending if landlords are putting the rents up, and we can discuss that later. It's reported that 21% of houses in the private rental sector are of a non-decent standard, higher than owner-occupier and the social housing sector, which in some respect is quite surprising. 45% of renters have no savings whatsoever. They can't save, they're paying too much money. And then, of course, we can talk about, and I don't know what it's like in Sweden, but the cost of living crisis is a real big issue and a real worry. And then I can touch on and talk to you about landlord action and evictions, because obviously some of you guys will obviously see my program in Sweden. Only 10% of households have adequate savings to be able to qualify for a 95% mortgage. Okay, so basically a lot of renters don't have any savings, and a lot of them are renting out of, not by choice, but because they feel like they're stuck. But you know, if you think about, I can't remember when we last did the podcast, and since we've last did the podcast, we've had COVID.
Yes.
And what happened in the UK, and again, I can't tell you what happened obviously in Sweden, but in the UK, you know, COVID started in March 2020. The courts were suspended for 6 months in the UK. They changed the whole process and procedure to evict tenants because they didn't want to evict people when there was no vaccine out there, and that was going to cause a lot of problems. We had, I don't know if you had the equivalent, we had furlough in the UK.
We had
furlough. So lots of people were supported, and there was bounce back loans and all that. And then what happened was, which was mental, right? They opened up and they gave concessions of no stamp duty for properties up to £500,000. So all of a sudden we're in the midst of 2-3 lockdowns for 18 months, almost 2 years. And then the housing market went bananas. So all the people that were going to buy tomorrow ended up buying today. So we got lucky in the UK because our housing industry, our economy in the housing market opened up really early compared to, you know, retail, travel, catering, hospitality. I mean, they got slaughtered. They got really badly affected. So we got quite lucky. And then it became but now where we stand at the moment, there's a real issue with regard to stock. All the agents now want more stock. We're seeing, you know, about the Section 21, and we can talk about that soon. But 26% of land. We did a recent poll to 1,500 landlords, and 26%, quarter of landlords, had served a Section 21 notice in the last 12 months because they were selling. So there's a massive issue of landlords in the UK that are selling because they're worried about recession. They're worried about all the regulation, and of course the renters reform bill coming in because they don't understand it. They are worried about Section 24 and the tax implications. But you're still getting really big landlords, portfolio landlords, that are piling into the industry, that have processes and systems in place that can scale up. And then of course, and then the biggest challenge, and we haven't even touched on it yet, is going to be the upgrade of EPCs, electrical performance certificates, up to level C, where there's a lot of properties that are D and E, and then you have to spend some money up, i.e. home insulations, insulate your lofts, water heaters, electricity pumps, all those stuff, and that's going to cost money. So that's scaring landlords.
Sorry for cutting you off, but regarding the EPC regulation, is this done deal, or is it just that it's a proposal?
It's a proposal. No. So basically, it's coming out 2025 to 2030. But then, you know, if you think you've got a landlord that's got a terrace property in the northeast of England, okay, and the tenants on a housing benefit and they're getting £6,000 a year, right, £6,000 a year, the figures don't stack up, but they've got to spend 10 to 15 grand to do their property to get it up to a C. So these are big worries. That's why, and of course, with the war in Ukraine and of course the energy crisis and the gas crisis, more and more landlords need to, and more people are looking at electricity and turning to get everything electric, so non-gas. And that's happening. We've seen a big shift change, but you know, gas bills are becoming a massive, I don't know what it's like in Sweden, massive problem in the UK. You know, I looked at my bank account and I don't really notice too much, but I noticed that there was a payment that came out for £350 last month. Which is like, in a way, it could be less than the same cost as a small mortgage.
Yes, exactly.
So that's going to be a big issue. And don't forget, the prices will change again. They're saying October and then January. They're going to go up again in January.
That's yeah. So what are your thoughts about the removing Section 21 then?
So, there's 12 points in the Renters Reform Bill, and I'll go through them all soon, but we're coming to Section 21. So Section 21 is going to be abolished, in my view, in the next 2, possibly 3 years. What will happen is there is some unintended consequences. You can't abolish Section 21 until you strengthen the grounds of Section 8. Okay? So once you strengthen the grounds of Section 8, you need to make sure, at the moment there's 17 grounds of Section 8. I reckon it go 24. I put a proposal in there for access. Big problem is tenants don't give landlords access. Move a landlord wanting to sell the property, a landlord wanting to move in, they're going to be mandatory grounds. They need to make a lot of the grounds more mandatory. At the moment, there's only 2 mandatory grounds. So that needs to be done. There needs to be some bailiff reform. There needs to be investment in the courts, which they were doing. The problem that you get is landlords panic because they don't understand. And you've got things, 85% of landlords out there only have between 1 and 3 properties, and they don't see themselves as landlords. That's part of the problem as well. And of course, managing a property now is harder than ever. You have to use a letting agent and understand. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's not like it was 10, 15 years ago. It's completely different. Completely different. So the abolishment of Section 21, the worry is you need all these provisions to be put in place. It shouldn't be rushed. I think landlords, when there is an end date, I think landlords will serve Section 21s. And the last time they gave evidence on Section 21s, I gave evidence relating to retaliation eviction in Parliament. But also, I worry about the more vulnerable tenants because referencing will become more stringent. There's going to be issues where they need to make sure they put provision for antisocial behaviour because a lot of landlords at the moment, they use Section 21 because they want to sell the property, maybe move in, rent arrears still high, or antisocial behaviour. So they need to strengthen the grounds. The whole point of abolishing Section 21, they call it non-fault, but there's always a fault and always a reason. But it's been dwindling for years because there's been more and more barriers like, you know, HMO license, deposit scheme, deregulation, EPC, gas safety, and all that type of stuff. So, that for me, I thought was going to be one of the biggest threats for landlords. In a way, I still put my name to that, but actually, the biggest threat is going to be EPCs and the cost. But it creates opportunity. It creates opportunity. There'll be landlords wanting to sell. Landlords actually will sell for 85% below market value, where 6 to 12 months ago they were looking at 95%. There's been a bit of adjustment, so it will create opportunity.
So I've skimmed through the papers.
So you read 84 pages?
No, I didn't. Now I'm lying. So what I did was, I think it was you who was writing on the NRLA, or if it was someone.
Yeah, I wrote an article. I wrote an article.
Yeah, I read that one.
Right.
So what I picked up was Section 13, first of all, if you could explain it to the listeners what it is,
Yes.
and can it still be used?
So I've got it right on this page here. See? Great minds speak alike. Great minds speak alike. So look, section 13 is basically for rent increase. So I think this is quite reasonable, but there is unintended consequences again. So what a rent increase is that what I have seen, which is happening on the ground now, because interest rates are rising and they're going to continue to rise. Don't forget, we've had record low interest rates, unprecedented. Landlords have come into it and they think it's normal. It's not. You know, I worked in 88, 90 recession. I'm that old. And the interest rate was 14, 15%, I know. Right?
Wow.
Exactly. People forget about that. So the interest rate, if it goes up to 4, 5, 6%, people are going to feel it big time. So naturally now landlords are putting the rents up. Where they've dipped beforehand, you could have had a tenant for 4 or 5 years. I'm not putting the rent up. So the rents are going up. What under the new proposals is that landlords will only be able to put the rent up once a year, which is reasonable. Yeah. I just need to plug in my battery because we're going to die otherwise.
Yeah.
Bear with me a second. You want to go mid-flow. And I've run out of battery. There we go. I'm okay. So you've got to do it once a year.
Yeah.
And the tenants have the ability to challenge excessive rent increases through a first-tier tribunal. So let's say I'm your tenant and you whack it up 500 quid a month. And I say that's excessive. I mean, don't forget, these are all proposals. So you've got to work out the legislation and obviously the mechanics of how it works. If I said that I think that's unfair, then I'm going to make an application to the first tier tribunal, which is basically an alternative to the courts system. Yeah. And then I go before, let's say you call him an arbitrator or a judge, and he looks at that, and actually a realistic charge is £150 a month for that area for a 2-bed flat, and then he makes something accordingly. So that makes sense. I can tell you now, because you have rent caps in Sweden, don't you?
Yeah.
So, and that's obviously a dirty word for landlords when it comes to rent caps. Scotland and Wales, it's on the agenda.
Yes.
England, it's not on the agenda. I'm pleased to say for a lot of landlords, but obviously, so it's not on the agenda. I know that. I can tell you that. So that's not on the agenda, but it is in Scotland and Wales. So that's basically what a rent increase is, and they're the plans for Section 13. At the moment, you have to serve a notice and give notification if you want to increase rent. But generally, historically, up until maybe the last 6 months to 12 months, landlords weren't putting rents up. It's a bit of a myth. A lot of landlords don't, because they've got a great tenant. They just want to keep them.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't want to avoid.
So have you seen more increase in eviction now when the cost of living, and I mean in October it will go up even further, and like you mentioned, January.
So basically the situation is as follows. I've now got 24 staff at Landlord Action. It's the busiest we've ever been. I started the business 22 years ago, 2000. Busiest we've ever been. Rent arrears. We're going to get busier than ever before. Latter part this year, next year. Next year, I mean, I predicted that in 2022 there'd be 80,000 possession claims. In 2019 was 110,000 possession claims. That includes social. I think that it will eclipse that in next year with the cost of living. Everything's going up. Food, energy, obviously fuel, everything's going up. Everyone's putting prices up. Your insurance, everything going up, as well as your mortgages and your rents and all that. So I think there's going to be more rent arrears cases, and there's going to be more landlords serving Section 21. Our Section 21 instructions has hit an all-time high, where landlord, and that's why I did the survey, where landlords are saying, I want to get out, I'm going to sell it, I'm going to cash it, because they're worried about a recession and they want to cash in. The difference is that's happening in the UK is we have a stock shortage.
Yes.
So now what's happening now with tenants, and I know this because I speak to landlords every day, all day, and I speak to letting agents. Tenants are bidding against each other for properties. That's never happened before. Never happened before.
That's crazy.
A property, let's say it's up for 1,500 quid. A tenant, so they can secure it, are offering 1,650 quid. It's happening, and that's because of the lack of stock.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell you, I can give you one.
So,
there was one stat here that I got from about lower stock levels, and I got this from this report that we wrote for the lettings industry. Rightmove reported that the rental demand is up 6% compared to last year, and the number of available properties is down 26%. Landlords have already started to exit the market due to high levels, regulation, tax, stamp duty, and changes in pending. For many accidental landlords, for those of one or two properties, renting is no longer an affordable investment. And that's what we're seeing. We're definitely seeing.
Yeah. That's I mean, it's sad, but as for a landlord, it's an opportunity as well. Like,
definitely.
So how?
I mean, I run a website, and I would encourage your viewers to, especially if your viewers that are interested in the landlord industry and the private rental sector industry in the UK. So I run a website. One of the websites I run is called landlordzone.co.uk. It's one of the biggest landlord portals. We've got over 130,000 members. So you can join it. It doesn't cost anything. You get all the breaking news and all that stuff. But one of our biggest advertisers is a company called, I'll send you the link. They're called Landlord Sales Agency, and they're one of our biggest advertising, and they buy and sell properties for landlords, but genuine below market value deals. You know, you could get 10% yield for a property in Liverpool, you know, which is a good investment. And if you're looking at yield and income, there's some great opportunities. There really is. So maybe I can send you that link, and I'll get one of the guys to contact you. And if any of you guys are interested, they do an online auction, but they've got genuine. So what they do is they have landlords that are selling properties, and they sell them to other landlords. But these landlords might have been landlords for 10, 15, 20 years. They've made their money. So they'll be a bit more realistic. But obviously their biggest worry is tax and capital gains, you know.
Yeah. So thank you. First of all, thank you for that suggestion and the link that you're gonna give me. How do you feel should landlord position themselves? Should they still do like private sector, or should they go to social housing to get like a guaranteed rent? You know, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I can give some. That's a good question. So look, if you're scaling up, you've got to look at doing it in a company, an SPV, a special purchase vehicle, and to buy some properties in that. Yes, front end there's higher end costs with regard to mortgage costs and company, but actually there's cheaper tax to pay because, of course, with Section 24 you can't offset interest only, and obviously you can pull out dividends, and there's all that type of stuff. Okay. So what I said was, I remember saying through COVID, Nana, that you'll see a lot of landlords that have the appetite to renting out to social housing associations on fixed terms, because you can get some really good income, right?
Yeah.
But obviously there's a lot more compliance, and that you have to deal with social, maybe more vulnerable tenants, ex-prisoners, all that type of stuff. But you really, especially overseas investors out here, the key to you being successful is having really good experts around you, but more importantly, have a really good, you can have a really good buying agent, like I told you, landlord sales agent, but have a really good company to fully manage. And the problem is you can come across letting agents to fully manage. And the reality is, and I represent one of the redress schemes called the property redress scheme. We have 17,000 agents that are members. Most agents are decent, but some agents are really poor. And, you know, and if you're sitting there in Sweden, you're Googling, trying to find an agent in Altrincham, you don't know them from Adam. So that's part of the issue as well. So I think that if you're looking at mixed income, you know, you could be looking at, you know, you could at house and multiple occupations. Yes, you can get higher rents. There's more regulation now, but managing an HMO is really difficult. You've got to have a really good agent. And of course you have a turnover, and there's issues that you get. So I think that rents are increasing year on month, really good. That's good. The demand, there's loads of tenant demand out there, which is great. And I think with what's happening, I don't, you know, there could be a recession, but the housing market's not going to collapse. There's no way it's going to collapse.
No.
Because of the demand. It's a completely different animal that we're in now. but I think that you can get some really good return for your money. You know, you could buy something in the Northwest for 120,000 pound, you know, and you could end up getting 800 quid a month rent, which is pretty good, on a mortgage of 300 quid a month. You know, there's quite good income, you know, and it's passive as well if you've got someone fully managing.
Yeah. So what does the new AST mean as a landlord? What is legitimate reason to end it?
Right, good. So an assured short-hold tenancy is normally a fixed term. It's a 6 or 12-month tenancy. That's what it's been historically. What the government are saying, they're saying, right, we want to make sure that you have periodic tenancies. And really what it means is, and this is a real worry for our industry, because of course, if you, let's say for argument's sake, you have a student tenancy, they're normally on a fixed term because it's term time and stuff. They're saying if it's on a periodic, then actually the tenant can move in and give you a month's notice or 2 months notice, then move. And then of course there's a lot of costs. You know, renewing the tenancy is generally that normally, you know, there's a lot of renewal teams that are actually in big corporate letting agents and stuff. So purpose blocks are exempt, so they can still have ASTs. Again, we've talked about the student market and about sharers and about and that's a big worry. I think the two things that really stuck out for me out of the 12 points was the abolishment section 21. How's that going to work? And periodic tenancies. Okay. Because they want but the red herring is that the average term of a tenancy is 4 years, 2 months anyway. So and they're saying they want tenants to have greater security, not being worried about being evicted, this, that, whatever. And I understand that. And of course, it's not easy when you've got a family and the land, you know, if you've got an accidental landlord, those 1 and 2s, and their circumstance, I've got to sell. And then, of course, you've got a perfectly good family, they're great family looking after the property, and then they're being evicted is really stressful, obviously.
Yes.
The kids have to come out of school. I mean, that's quite traumatic as well. So I get all that. And I think that there's still a lot more work that needs to be done about the periodic tenancies, how that works. I think there's got to be more exemptions. I think also there's issue with guarantors as well, because you get guarantors that will guarantee the fixed term tenancy. So if it goes periodic, they could give notice, and that means they can come off being a guarantor. And if you've got a housing benefit couple, you know, I've got big landlord friends of mine that part of their deal was I have to have a guarantor with every let. And they've got to be a homeowner, you know. So there's various different permutations that may happen. If these are all proposals, and I did say to the government, I said, look, these are proposals. Of course, as you know, as of yesterday, we got a new prime minister.
Yes.
Yeah, and they changed the housing ministers like you change your t-shirts. Right, every day, right? We've had 12 housing ministers in the space of like 6 years. It's not normal. So you can't get any continuity.
So basically, sorry for cutting you off again. So basically, this white paper, it can just be scrapped because it's a new housing minister.
I think they carry it on. There's a strategy. Don't forget, there's 11 million tenants out here. Right, and it's just about managing. They call them the jams. They want to make sure that the landscape of the private rental sector has changed the last 5 to 10 years, and I understand that's why the government are looking at it. That's why they want to give tenants greater protection, decent housing, raising standards, all that stuff. I'm all for that. And the thing is, landlords need to remember, a bit different if you're a landlord in Sweden, because you don't have any contact with your tenant, but you've got a managing agent, right? But you still get it. You still understand the Swedish market and how tenants are treated in Sweden, whatever. Yes, we're going more like that, and we're not as regulated, and we don't have, you know, caps and all that type of stuff. Is that still the tenant is your customer? You know?
Yes.
No tenant, no landlord, no tenant, no letting agent. You know,
exactly.
Actually, they're paying the biggest amount of money to you for a product. The product is living in a safe home of quiet and enjoyment, not being harassed, you know, and making sure, and your goal as a landlord is, if you've got a good tenant in your property, you want them to stay as long as possible.
Yeah,
You don't want
exactly.
void periods. You don't want relet fees. You don't want refurb fees. Yeah.
No.
And my motto is, as a landlord, no news is good news.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
It's
that's
true
the
though,
best.
no? So
Yeah,
if your tenant's paying the rent, they're not contacting you. I know you could be a bit cynical. It means they're happy,
yeah,
and that's how you do it. That's why you get some landlords think, oh, I'm going to put the rent up. I'm going to put the
yeah,
rent up, and they're going to put it up 50 quid a month, whatever. Sometimes actually, what's the point?
yeah, exactly.
You've got to take a view, but it depends. Don't forget, everyone's costs are going up.
Exactly. So, what will this private renters ombuds
Ombudsman.
man do?
Go on. I'm gonna really put you in it now. What's it called?
Private renters ombudsman.
Ombudsman. You got it. You got it right. You got it right. You got it right. So I will tell you exactly what it is, because again, our organisation is involved in it. So
Yeah,
there's two redress schemes, two ombudsmen. At
yeah,
the moment, they relate to the lettings agents. Anyone that takes rents, anyone that manages, has to belong to a redress scheme or an ombudsman scheme. So there's the property ombudsman and there's the property redress scheme. And one of our companies is the property redress scheme. So we run 3 government schemes. We run My Deposits, the deposit scheme. We run the property redress scheme and Client Money Protect, which is a scheme where agents have to have client money protection in place if they go bust and the consumer is protected. The single ombudsman is basically meaning that if you are a landlord, okay, and we wait the details. In Wales, is if you use a letting agent, technically you don't have to be like part of Rent Smart Wales, but they're saying a lot of it is about data. Don't forget, they want your data. They have it with the deposit schemes. One can be cynical that they want that information for other reasons, obviously, and we all know why. But basically, is I'm your tenant, you're my landlord, you rent the property out to me. You as a landlord, the standards needs to be raised, that property needs to be safe. You've complied with all the deregulation stuff. I'm paying you good money, but the property is in a terrible state.
yeah.
You're not doing any repairs, which is going to be the biggest complaint. And actually, me as a tenant, I can complain to someone. I can make a complaint. At the moment, you make it to the agent. If it's really, really, really bad, you can make it to the environmental health officer, like you see on our TV show, which they follow the council. Enforcement is an issue because there's always a lack of resource and funds. But basically, we are piloting for the property redress scheme with the National Residential Landlords Association. We are piloting a landlord redress scheme at the moment. So we're a bit ahead of the game. And we've got over 5,000 NRLA members. So I would, if you're a landlord and you want to keep up to breast, I would join the National Residential Landlord Association. It costs £75–80 a year. You get updated all that. You hear people speak like me, or you do. There's content.
I'm already in it. Do you mean the NRLA, right?
NRLA. So you're ahead of the curve. You're one of the main.
That's where that's where I saw your paper.
Oh, that's it. So
that's where I based all the questions.
You rent properties out in the UK. You want to know that those investments are going to stand up. You want to make sure that the demand's there, that they're not going to be a threat, right? And that's it. And you're doing the right things. You're speaking to experts, and more importantly, you belong to an organisation. So they've got about 100,000 members, but there's 2.3 million landlords out there. So there's a lot of work.
Wow.
So the landlord redress scheme is coming in, and we're actually piloting it at the moment as part of our business.
That you mentioned, this property portals for landlords.
Yes.
Must the landlord be a member of it? Is that
it will be at the moment? No, but it will be compulsory. So if you're allowed, again, like it is with the letting agents. So if you do not belong to it and you start trading, you could be fined £5,000, and then there's various different sanctions that you can do. So basically, if you're renting, you'll have to belong to a redress scheme. It might cost you £20 a year, whatever, but you'll get a stamp, and and then with that there's education and stuff, and and you should always get landlord insurance, because also, and again, the organisation I represent, our core business here for Hamilton Fraser is we do landlord insurance. We do the landlord insurance for the National Residential Landlord Association. So we insure about 20 to 25,000 properties. So landlord insurance is really important. So heaven forbid you get a cannabis factory, right? Because that happens. We pay up to £25,000 malicious damage, or flood, fire, escape from water, because your building insurance won't cover you because it's a rented property. So you have to get landlord insurance. It costs you £100 or whatever. But
I need to switch to yours.
Switch to me, email me. You'll get mates rates. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Oh, I like it. So I saw in the paper as well, or in the report you did on the NRA, you mentioned blanket bans for children and family. What does this mean?
Yeah, no, I think you've misread it a little bit.
Yeah, maybe.
You can't. You're not allowed to ban children. That's definitely not what I'm going to do. What it is that you can't advertise to say you will not rent to a DSS or a social tenant, because that's prejudicial.
Okay.
So, but you can't do that. Most people don't do that. The reality is this: if I've got 5 people looking and applicants over my property, and I've got a professional couple and they're offering me £1,600 a month, and I've got a family or just even someone on housing benefit, and they can only pay £1,200 a month, and then possibly I have to rely on their universal credit to come direct to me, because there's issues with direct payment, as you well know. Who are you going to go for? It's commercial, and that's the problem. But you can't advertise bans on. It actually says it actually does say you can't ban on renting to families with children or housing benefit receipts. I've never seen people actually putting up no families or children. I have seen no DSS in the past. That can't be done. That would be illegal, which is fair enough. You can also, as a landlord, as a tenant, have the right to request a pet in your property. Okay. But the landlord must consider it. And actually the landlord could say, right, I want you to take out pet insurance, pet damage insurance.
Okay.
Which is reasonable. But if you've got a property, and if you've got a 2-bed flat in a block, and you've got a massive dog, and that's a breach of the head lease, that's an issue. But no, if you're going to be my tenant, and I'm sure you'll be a great tenant, and you're not going to have wild parties and trash property, I'll let you bring your goldfish in.
Yeah, so that's more like wording, that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you believe in total of all of this? Let's say if this goes through, do you believe the court will speed up things with the new reform, or will it still be lagging?
Look, so I need to do a bit of a deeper delve, because some courts are quicker than others. They're trying to do a lot more stuff online. For argument's sake, they do Section 21. I'm saying you could do that online. Eventually, that's going to go the accelerated possession procedure. You need more judges. The morale with judges was quite low when I went on. I was on a working group in October 19, when I met a judge, and she said the morale for judges were an all-time low, because there was a lot of mental health issues that happened at court hearings. I mean, we might do 20 to 30 hearings a month all over the country. So we have advocates that represent the landlords at court. So there has been confirmation of, I think, about £200 to £300 million worth of investment in the courts. At the moment, you can issue proceedings, get them online. Obviously, the backlog now from COVID has obviously caught up. There is a shortage of bailiffs. Bailiffs are really poorly paid, and being a bailiff can be quite dangerous and all that type of stuff. So I'd like to think the housing courts which was proposed prior to COVID. That's off the table now. I haven't heard anything more about that. So I just think they need to do stuff more online. Tenants making sure they can get access to legal help. But more, I think also that the more severe cases, and we put some proposals on about speeding up the court. And we've said that, you know, for argument's sake, there should be the speeding up of rent arrears cases, severe rent arrears. If there's rent arrears cases for 6 months or more, they should have earlier hearing dates. You know, there should also be a scenario where if there's 6 months rent arrears or more, you can transfer and use a high court sheriff rather than a county court bailiff, so you can get a quicker eviction date, because that turns out quicker. Though. So there's quite a lot of scenarios that are happening, but there's also a scenario where they are bringing mediation in. They want to bring in mediation in much earlier. And again, we have a mediation business. We do mediation. So bringing mediation after serving a notice before issuing a claim, that'll be part of the process. Because by the time it goes to court, mediation, that horse is bolted.
Yeah, exactly. So when will this take effect, do you think? How long will you like negotiate back and forth, or they're gonna listen to?
So what happened is, right, so the reality is this. We've now got a new prime minister. She now needs to put a new housing minister in. The housing minister needs to get his feet under the table. The civil servants are all in place. There is a renters reform working unit. I've spoke to them. So now what they have to do is they've got to gather the information. There's been loads of working around the place. Ben Beadle, who does a great job, who's the CEO of the NRLA, he gave evidence yesterday in Parliament. There's a lot of work to be done. Then there has to be some legal law proposals. Then there's going to be toing and fro, and that's why the industry has to come together. And then, you know, the reality is this may not come in for 2 to 3 years. Some of the stuff they'll try and speed up. Some of this will fall away. There's 12 points. You know, and of course the tenant groups want that, the landlord groups want that, and then of course you have to try and meet in the middle. So it has to become legislation. But I would say to you guys, don't fear it. Look, you live in Sweden, so you know better than anyone. You know, you understand what's going on with renting. When it comes to regulation, you're way ahead, right? And of course, the more regulation you get, the more it could stifle investment. I get that, because of course you have to make sure you've got funding, you know, for it to go ahead. There's a whole load of stuff that needs to be sorted out. So I can't see this happening for 2 to 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. So with that, I know in 2 3 years you're definitely gonna come back. And you're gonna go.
I might not be about. I might have decided, you know what? I've had enough of London. I'm going to come and move to Malmo in Sweden.
I'll agree to you.
I couldn't do that because I miss my football team, Tottenham, too much.
Yeah. You were lucky.
Hold on a second. You came to London, but you didn't bother calling me. What's all that about?
No. I'm gonna tell you why I couldn't.
All right, tell me and tell the viewers.
I'll tell the viewers. So I attended a wedding, and I brought my mom and my fiance's mom and the kids, and you know it's so much time during the day that you can stretch.
That's so fair. I no disrespect to your fiance, your kids, your mum, your mother-in-law. That's fine. I'm pleased in the nicest possible way you didn't want to meet up with me in that respect, because I've got my own family. But you could have called me and said, Paul, do you fancy a beer? I could have got you a 2-hour window for you to relax.
True. So that's why next time
when
I'm coming, because I'm coming during the autumn, we grab a beer, and maybe, who knows, we maybe can watch a game or something.
So if you play your cards right, I might take you to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Oh,
a brand new stadium, 61,000, and you can see live in the flesh Harry Kane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not see the toilet stadium? That's the
what? Where's that come from?
Haven't you seen it from above?
Yeah, no, well, I suppose it looks a bit like a toilet seat, and I suppose there's so many things I could say about about Spurs playing crap and all that, but I'm not going to.
No. But you know I'm an Arsenal fan, so that's why I'm giving a
and
speech.
yeah, I know. Yeah.
And we're top of the league.
On that note, I think you've killed the podcast now.
Oh, I love it. Okay, Paul. So if people want to have your details again, and
yes,
what are you doing during in the future? What are you up to?
I am everywhere. So look, I'm happy if any of your guys, your viewers, I always make sure that I'm approachable. Okay, so my email address is Paul, Paul at landlordaction.co.uk. Okay, if anyone wants an introduction maybe to landlord sales agency investors, I'm happy for them to email me. I'll pass it on to them. They can speak to them about below market value deals. They are generally below market value because I've seen them. I don't put my name to anything, to be honest. Or if you need advice about insurance or eviction, anything like that, I can signpost you with pleasure.
Yes,
very happy to help.
That's wonderful. And do you hear?
And
that
you can follow me on
listeners...
socials. So you know, on LinkedIn, which you follow me, on Facebook, or on Twitter, you can, and then you can just follow what I'm up to. I do lots of public speaking all over the country.
You're everywhere now. It seems like you're
now.
everywhere.
It's opened up now. I'm really. I mean, I can tell you now. During COVID, I was pretty depressed. All right. Yeah. At first, it was tough. In the first lockdown, I thought to myself, "Oh my God, I'm at home, with my family and my missus. No disrespect to them, but I and then what I did was I did an event like this every day. Every single day or every other day, I did a webinar. I did a Facebook Live. I did a Zoom. I did a podcast. I did whatever. I did loads of it just for my mental health to engage. And I actually said to our management team, I said, "You've got to engage your customers." But just the last story, I was doing a webinar with a letting agent organizer. I had 300 and I was building an extension during COVID as well, which was the worst experience of my life, but that's another story. I was in mid-flow. I was doing a webinar to 300 letting agents, and my kids, for the first lockdown, my daughter's 12, my boy's 16. They were in their pajamas for the first six weeks of lockdown. They didn't change. And my daughter came down while I was in a pod doing the webinar, and she goes, "Dad, can we do the TikTok now?" And she starts dancing in the background. And it's just like, everything was so real, you know, because it was just like people working from home and just trying to get on with their normal lives. But everything changed, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, nice story.
Yeah.
No, but definitely we need to meet up and have a pint or something.
Give me a call, and I will be glad to meet up with you in London.
Yes.
I might even take you night clubbing.
Oh, whoa!
I've heard you got some moves.
That's been a while.
I've heard you got some moves.
I used to have some moves.
I don't want you pulling a muscle on the dance floor.
My hamstring.
Yeah, your hamstring gone. Good stuff.
Okay, Paul. People, don't be stressed. Invest.